All set?
Oh my God.
Good, good. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Long time.
The final panel of the day, our wrap-up session will be moderated by Rick Miller. As you already have heard, he's the president of Olin College and one of the three amigos who started the Grand Challenges Scholars Program. He was previously engineering dean at, well, he's currently the president of Olin College and was previously the engineering dean at the University of Iowa, associate dean at USC in Los Angeles, and assistant professor of engineering at UC Santa Barbara. He is also an NAE member and received the NAE's Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. And it seems like we are often calling on him to do these wrap-up sessions because he's so good at it. All yours, Rick.
Yeah, thank you. Well, our job is to try to decide what we learned today. One of my good friends, Howard Gardner, says that's an easy task. What you need to ask yourself is the following question. I used to think X, and now I think Y. So you should be thinking about what X and Y are after having spent a day here at the Academy. So what we're going to do in this panel, we're going to go down the line. We have representatives from all of the different sessions today, from the student panel, the alumni panel, the industry panel, the Cool Ideas panel, and we have an at-large person, really large, Megan Smith, who I'm going to ask to go first. And each of us is going to take about 5 minutes, and then we'll have time at the end for audience participation. I want to, though, introduce Megan a little more than the others, because the others have all been on stage once, and you've all heard an introduction for them. Megan is a very special person. So her biography is in your list. In case you haven't looked for it, you can read along. But she's currently the co-founder of a company called Shift7. She was the third U.S. Chief Technology Officer. She helped the president and the federal teams harness the power of technology, data, and innovation to advance the future of the nation and the world. That's a pretty good job description. Talk about grand challenges. She was formerly, for 11 years, the vice president of Google. She led their acquisitions of Google Earth, Maps, and Picasa, and lots of other stuff. She was also the CEO of Planet Out. She's an NAE member. She is also, which I found particularly interesting, co-founder of the Malala Fund, which I think really tugs at your heart, an engineering graduate of MIT, and I believe a student of one of my mentors, Woody Flowers. Yeah. She's also a member of the MIT student team that designed, built, and raced a solar car 2,000 miles across the Australian outback. Would you talk to us for a few minutes about your observations?
Yeah, this has been an incredible day. And I just wanted to applaud everybody here. And in our company, Shift7, we think about collective genius, and this is really collective genius. And I know I preach to the converted, or I speak to the converted, because we're all teammates. I mean, you guys are founders in making this happen. I just wrote down a couple key things, and I threw some images, and I'm going to go really fast through them. The first one has to do with sharing. And it's really about this community, because a lot of the stuff that you already need is already here. And so this is an image of an example. That's Chattanooga, Tennessee, and that's in West Virginia. And so this is the highest speed internet in the Western Hemisphere through community organizing. This poor man's getting water for his family. And nobody's making a WeWork Makerspace Fab Lab in that building over there, but why not? Right? So if people knew each other, extraordinary things would happen. And so this is a network, you know, whether it's through that we can really leverage. And the more we think about who's doing what and share fast, that's a huge opportunity. I heard it all day, and it's a great thing. The second I want to do is, Kumar was here, computer science for all. That means all of us, all topics. And so what I want to get to is, like, we can use these technologies in engineering for anything, like heroic engineering. You know, so this is some USC-related work. This is actually lines in movies. That's children's TV, men's lines to women's lines. It's really biased when we're kids and we grow up and make this. That's men's lines to women's lines in 2,000 films. So luckily we teamed up with USC, and this is starting to measure, using machine learning, AI, data science. This is gender and race from the first Star Wars in 1977 to today, and begin to use tools, just like we can drive a car down the street by itself. Maybe we can use face recognition and AI and other tools to debug our media and make it less stereotyped. And maybe we could do it at the script days. Maybe we could do it during the dailies, and maybe we could get out of this mess where we make children's TV where there's 15 to 1 boy programmers to girl programmers. So I heard all day amazing examples. This is one where that's Burning Man, and that's the Atari refugee camp. They're the same size and budget. You know, so why are we doing systems in some way? So these are systems problems. It was interesting to be in my job because they expected the CTO in the NASA meeting, and they expected us at DOE, and they expected us at DOD, and they expected us at NH. But if you went to HHS, and you suddenly showed up in HS, in the foster care meeting, like, what are you doing here? Isn't that interesting? So we did a hackathon for foster care, and there'll be another one at Howard this Friday. And so you can do amazing things to solve for our children there. And we started to open data sets, 200,000 data sets, not just the ones for mapping, which I love because I get to work on those products, but what about HUD? Housing mobility, housing affordability. How about Redfin, Zillow, Airbnb? Make some stuff for that and some startups. So I started to think about ed and justice and those areas. And then Grace started teaching the police chief how to code. She's in 10th grade. She's in New Orleans. And so we started to have a data cabinet because it'd be fun to be in a cabinet. And so all of a sudden people started doing rubrics for data science across the government, across all agencies. And so NASA could suddenly help Department of Labor and State. The State Department is the furthest behind in tech, as we know from someone's email. So we need to get them on board, and we can't like management consult them. We have to just make a community about it, and you can have hackathons about that. You know, the Standing Rock team protested so beautifully on getting us out of this sort of fossil fuel nightmare that we're in. But there are geniuses there, and the MIT team asked, what do you guys got? 22 proposals. And then we funded 6 people doing energy and ag. And so for grand challenges, it might be ask the most impoverished people what they are already doing and get the students coming up underneath them. You know, they're redesigning their communities. This is really happening. So we did this at the UN, and we said, who's already got solutions? So this is one where you just reach out. We got 1,000 submissions from 100 countries, over 100 countries in 2 weeks, of people doing crazy things, flying drones to plant a billion trees a year, right? These people are teaching law in prison for the Justice League. This is a floating fab lab. So do you want to cut down the trees in the Amazon, or do you want to have a floating fab lab at advanced manufacturing in the Amazon? This is actually being designed and worked on by an indigenous guy, Ben Juarez. So how do we get everybody in the future? So this is the third point, because the first one is share. Second one is all topics, infinite topics. Third is sharing and bring the community. We're on tech jobs tour all over our country. This is Oakland. 2,000 people wanted to be in the tech world. They showed up for 200 people to mentor them. So how might you community organize this differently? This is the Memphis Career Center. So we've got all the tech meetup organizers around the country to show up and meet each other and start working together. So there's a lot of colleagues and community members across your world. George Washington Carver trained 2,000 farmers a month to upgrade their to create ag extension. You know, Jane Addams, amazing, right? The Nobel Peace Prize for founding social work. She used a lot of data science. So what are we doing in the social work side? Because that's engineering. Ida B. Wells, and I'm almost done, is one of the greatest American data scientists. My own personal goal is that next to Einstein, Ida will be out here and you can sit on her lap too. And we'll get there. So she said, you know, the way the right or wrong is shine a light of the truth, and she's really the original Black Lives Matter data scientist. You know, and she, in the day that we did the Chicago World's Fair, when Edison and Tesla got to be all that, Frederick Douglass and Ida protested. There's an entire paper on the internet of what the African American exhibit hall would have been at the Chicago World's Fair. The architects, the inventors, everybody. What if that had been? Then we wouldn't have had this stage this year at CES. No African American people on stage. No people of color, no women. Just one Asian man. Like, really? Why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep having this racism and sexism going on? So my last one is like, there are people out there. Ada did invent computer science. 55-page paper the day that Darwin wrote. But she didn't get credit. And just for fun, I want you to look at her hair. So I'll end there that I just think you guys are amazing. And this is a new film that's about some of the science fair kids. This is the answer. The answer is that there's not bells between the subjects, and exactly what we're doing is everything, and anything I can do to help. The whole point of Shift 7 means and it's just to continue the kind of work we were doing where we were too rare, and we're too rare in a lot of subjects, and I think we have an opportunity to really, really change how life is on Earth and maybe in space. together by engaging everybody and really empowered by our students, facilitated by all of the talent in this room and those who are colleagues with. So thank you.
Ria, student from USC in Los Angeles, what did you pick up today that you thought was really worth taking home?
Yeah, well, that's an incredibly tough act to follow, so I'm gonna have to think about that for a second. But I think the biggest thing that I've experienced today, which has been absolutely inspiring, is the community here, which has been absolutely inspiring. Sometimes it's very easy as a university student to get lost in your own little university silo within your own community space. And it feels like it is very diverse, and it is because you're interacting with different people every day at your own university. But it's so important to coordinate across different schools and across the country. I was joking that I was adopted by the University of Idaho this week in the last 2 days. But that has been awesome because I've been learning so much about how their program is structured and how other student programs are structured. Ours, we were lucky to be one of the founding members of this program. So the administration had a hand in it the whole time, but it's been really inspirational to see how student groups are taking that initiative and how they're pushing their peers to find mentors and to find these opportunities and to really grow the engineering community at large on a student basis. My second point is that it's been really great to come to this place and really feel like I have a voice. And I think I can speak for a lot of the students here that that's something that, again, as a university student feels tough sometimes, that you have all these ideas, but you don't feel like you have a platform to share them. So coming to meetings like this, where you can help shape the future of the engineering education, it is really inspiring and really powerful to feel as a student. Even if I am a senior and I'm graduating soon, it's really reassuring and really comforting to know that I can help shape engineering education for those coming after me and to shape the future of engineering education, basically. I think we just came from the engineering ethics session. That was incredibly inspiring as well. Someone brought up kind of a tough point saying that it was an optional session. I think that next year, hopefully, that can be a mandatory session. I think engineering ethics is a critical place to start exploring as well as engineers. All of us want to change the world. All of us want to impact the world positively. But I think the ethics behind that is also a critical space to explore as students, administrators, and faculty. So that was a really cool takeaway from here as well. Also, something that I definitely will bring back to my peers at USC and continue to talk with my students, my friends from high school and stuff. The value to employers was fantastic to see. I've been engaged with the Grand Challenge program since my freshman year, but marketing that to employers is something that we don't necessarily learn right off the bat, but yeah, you get to tie all of your accomplishments up in this one cohesive package and present it to people and say, hey, I did all these amazing things and I found my passion along the way, and let me tell you about it, and let me tell you about all the different ways I explored it in all these different ways and all the cool experiences and skills I picked up. So that was also really great to hear from employers and from fantastic companies like Honeywell. So it's been a really inspiring day. I hope to continue these conversations, and it was a great time. I'm really thankful.
Terrific. Thank you, Ria. Leo Cabuz is at Honeywell and was part of the corporate industry panel, which is, I think, really an important group for us because most of us in this audience are educators, and we're producing graduates who need and I think will thrive in the new industry that's going forward. So I think your insights and ideas and your takeaways from this meeting are particularly important.
Thank you. So first of all, really honored to be part of the group, not only now here on the stage, but for the entire meeting. So thank you very much for having me. You asked what is different now compared with when I came. Very simple. I'm saying now it's real, which I didn't know exactly when I came in. I've been involved with the initiative for a short few months. It sounded excited, but I didn't know yet how real it is. And I think now I can say it's real. And what makes me say that it's real is the fact that all the students who were here, who are at the beginning of the program, who are, a student from Maryland, a young lady talked to me, she's just engaged into this, we have alumni and so on. They all want to make the world a better place. And this is giving them a platform to make the world a better place. And that's why this is real. And then it's our duty, it behooves us as adults as educator or as employers or as members of the academy, which has, you know, the duty to guide the development of these talents, to provide them as good of a platform, as strong of a platform, and as solid of an engagement. So I'm a little bit more tactical. So you were, Megan, with the vision. I'm going to be with the execution, yeah? I'm from the industry. Actually, I took the, I took the time to actually read all the notes that were on the panel there and to try to coalesce them and to consolidate and to see what are the key topics. And also, through the presentations, I was trying to say, well, what is going to be next? What do we need to do to take this to the next level? And I have here a 6-point list, if I may have your attention to read through that. I'm actually starting with what I have as number 4. I think we need a major effort in branding. I think the numerous initiatives that there are, because there are many people that try to make the world a better place, from the United Nations to the different universities to all the companies that we were talking. The question is, how do we make an effort in branding so that everybody recognizes, this is what this is all about, and the employers and the universities and the students and the parents and everybody knows what this is all about. And I think it will be very worthwhile to think about that. Another big thing that for me it's coming as I was listening at the beginning at what the different universities were doing. It looks to me like we took an approach to the grand challenges like an open source program, where everybody comes with their own contribution, which is vetted by the steering committee, but it's still in an open source approach. I think we need to continue this paradigm of an open source, but to have a repository, to have, you know, to build, not to be just individual modules that are sitting there, but how do you build into a coherent system? Because that would be the idea. And so the way it started, it's right, but then how do you organize this and who's going to be the moderator, so to speak, of the open source approach for this kind of thing? What was on the panels was many people in different forms, they were saying the connectivity inside the network, the connectivity inside the Grand Challenges campuses, the connectivity even, you know, with employers. Very important topic that was spelled out in many different versions. Another thing, a database of idea for projects aligned with GCP, where people can go and say, well, I would like this, but I'm not sure what to do, where we could have a database of idea where they could pick something like that would make it much easier. A toolbox for those who start the program, like syllabi, things like that. How do we create the toolbox for people that want to start to get going very quickly on this? And I think, as I was mentioning earlier, that I would like to see that industry is becoming an integral part of the Grand Challenges Scholar Program, because industry has to recognize the students when they graduate, has to value them, and has to continue to provide to them a career path that is commensurate with their effort and their aspiration. So these are my notes.
Thank you very much, Cleo.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mona Dai, who is an alumnus of the program. And I think came from Duke and is now, are you at EPA or the Department of Energy?
I'm an ORISE fellow at the EPA, so I'm not a federal employee. I do research there.
Terrific. Yeah. So what can you share with us that you learned from the alumni panel?
Yeah, so I think one of the most interesting things that I've learned from today is that, for one, being an alumni, I actually have thought of Grand Challenges as something that I've done in the past. It's like a past tense for me, but coming here today and seeing that, no, it's actually an ongoing thing, and that being able to talk to the other alumni, being able to talk to the other students, and see all of the great things that are still happening. I agree with one of the things that you guys brought up, is that the schools are all different, right? All the programs are different and they're set up differently. And the idea of having like a syllabi that new programs can start up with is great. But also I think talking to people and like seeing how much they love their experiences is because they're all very individual. They're all very independent and flexible, and that students have ownership over their own fellowship is great, and it's an amazing opportunity to do so. The other thing about the connectivity is, I think, amazing. I met a Duke alum here who I had never met before and never heard of before, and he was also a Grand Challenge Scholars program, or Grand Challenge Scholar, and that would have been great to be able to meet him before, and that's awesome. And also during lunch even, I was sitting there and people were passing around their phones, adding each other on LinkedIn, which is great, and someone brought up the idea, I think from Montgomery College, why isn't there a LinkedIn group?
Perfect.
Just for Grand Challenge Scholars program. So just the idea of having so many people that are involved, like students, professors, industry, everyone, there should be like a much easier, greater way to just have everyone to be together. And I think this is a great way to do it.
Good. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Daryl, you probably have the toughest task of all. Of all the cool ideas, what can you share with us, the things we should take away?
Well, if I tried to pick one of the cool ideas, then one of the speakers would be very upset. Many of the speakers would be very upset at me. I think all the ideas were fantastic. I was privileged to moderate that panel. But before I give my remarks, I just want to do something for the founders of this program, to acknowledge you guys by name. So Tom, Giannis, and Rick, let's give them a round of applause for creating this program. I think they've done something fantastic for our community, and we're deeply grateful, and I think you guys don't get enough recognition, so I wanted to do that. I also want to thank Rama for his leadership in growing the program, his constant emails to me to get my own proposal in, and the work that Jenna's committee did, so I just want to say thank you to them personally while I had the mic. So now, yes, absolutely. And finally, before I get to my remarks, and David Lovell and Liz Galvin, who are my team, just wave your hand. Thank you for being here. They're leading our program at Maryland. So you don't have to applause for them. I just wanted to recognize them. Okay, so now going back to big ideas. So, you know, it's hard when you go last because all the stuff has been said. But what I would like to do is walk you through the day real quickly. So we had a wonderful keynote talk by Kumar Garg, who worked in the Obama White House. And I think taking a little bit from what Megan said and just expanding it to how Kumar thought about big ideas, I think we have a movement here. And whether we call it GSP for all, but we have a movement. And that's really basically reiterating what Megan said. But Kumar brought that out this morning of how to think about taking this to the next level. And as you recall, what he mentioned was CS for all. And now CS for all is everywhere, K through 12, to higher education, to industry. And now we have this incredible continuum, right, where he said that even today, we have 130,000 students taking the second AP exam in the United States, which is incredibly diverse because half of those students are female students. I don't know if you knew that. He didn't say that, but that's true. So that's amazing. That's a movement, folks. You're part of a movement. So that's the big idea from Kumar. From the student panel, you heard the words about connectivity, about community. So, and I'm just reiterating what they said. So we should have GCSP chapters, student chapters everywhere, so that connectivity is hardcore, wired in to our universities, not considered to be a fringe entity. It's a chapter. It's driven by students like EWB, which has an incredible following as well, and is part, in some sense, of the GCSP program. From the corporate group, you know, Cleo mentioned her remarks, and so therefore I won't re-mention those, but I will relate one of the points that you made, Cleo, which is I think we need Grand Challenge Scholars program corporate chapters. You mentioned that in your remarks. That creates and builds a network again, not just from the student level, but also from the corporate level. And then I was sitting in the audience and I was talking to a colleague from Stony Brook, and I forgot his name, but I wanted to mention what he told me, that there's a partnership possibly between GCSP and EWB, where EWB might certify some of the elements of the GCSP competencies, which means that your university doesn't have to have an EWB chapter if you don't have one, but if you're doing things that are related to social consciousness or global outreach, that EWB can certify your program so that you can still have a GCSP program. So I think that's a wonderful big idea to have as well. Now, I'll go now to, not the alumni group, but I'll go to where Jenna was recognized. And Jenna's done a fantastic job with her team. But it made me think that Dan Moat should have his wife Patsy Moat come up with a pin for every Grand Challenge Scholars student who completes the program. So why can't we have a GCSP pin that Mona and Rhea can wear, and also have Dr. Moat give it to them, right? Why not? And then on the alumni chapter, so Michaela, I just took one of her points. Here's a student who's a biomedical PhD student, decides to start a national policy student organization. Now that's what I call leadership from GCSP students. Yeah. And that's what we should also promote is leadership, is taking big steps to create big initiatives like that. So we should give Michaela a round of applause for creating that big idea. To get off the mic, I'll mention that we, in the Dean's Club of the College of Engineering, have been working towards an advanced high school course in engineering, and I've been the chair of the K-12 Engineering Education Committee. And we are going to include the Grand Challenges as the core element of that curriculum and that course. And so that is taking it to the next step in K-12 so that we have a high school course in engineering that encompasses the Grand Challenge areas, and that brings this idea to a whole nother level within the K-12 environment. And at that, I'll finish with that statement. So thank you.
Thank you. A lot of X's and a lot of Y's here. We need some Z's, I guess. I just want to stop for a second and make sure everybody knows what Daryl has been doing with this K-12 program. The Grand Challenge Scholars Program has been going on for about 8 years. That's the same length of time that Daryl's been working on this K-12 program that is now almost at the point of launch, right?
Yeah, that's great.
It's really tremendous. So that's quite an important achievement that stands on its own legs.
And can I just put out one more selfish plug? So we're having a workshop on the curriculum to finalize the curriculum for the high school course, December 10th through 12th. It'll be in College Park, Maryland. If you're interested, just catch me after this last session and give me your business card, and we'll try to get you an invitation. So, thank you.
Super. I just want to say a few things about the status of the program, where it came from and where it's going, and how this all relates to the activities that we've seen. We started off this morning with Dan's remarks about engineering, about how the Grand Challenges and the Grand Challenge program is really reframing the public understanding of what engineers do, and it's reframing our identity. And I think the four words that he used were basically creative solutions for people in society. And the people in society were not there until we really discovered it with the Grand Challenges and brought them to the front. That's a transformative way of thinking about engineering. It's going to take a while before it catches on. I think if you do a Google search on engineering, you don't pick up, I think you pick up something like 50% of the images are white guys with hard hats on. So we have a ways to go, but this is a start. I also want to say from my own point of view, as an educator, this program has the potential to do something that I think is really profound and very much needed today. And that is, you could say it this way, a good education changes what you know. And you can change what you know from a flat screen and a really cool piece of software. But a great education changes who you are. And to change who you are takes emotion. It takes something much deeper. It takes identity, agency, and purpose. And that always takes human contact. Somebody that you look in the eye, somebody that you build empathy with, and somebody that you develop purpose with as you create something of value to them. This program enables every student to experience both the building of empathy and the development of purpose through human contact, something that should be probably core, but at least as an accessory to the way education is practiced now. So that's really my goal here. I also think, just reflecting back on the power of AI and where we're going today, one of the few advantages, Giannis, of being the guy in the photo that has the least amount of hair, is I'm sort of born old, okay? is that I can remember stuff that you youngsters weren't maybe around. There was a lot of discussion about how technology is going to change the world in the past, too. Almost the same kind of tidal wave of optimism and belief after World War II with the power of nuclear energy. In fact, in 1955, with the Grinter Report that changed all of engineering education, the vision was modern science. That's what's going to change education. We all needed to learn modern physics then, quantum mechanics, because everything was going to be nuclear. And now if you fast forward to today, you can see it didn't quite roll out the way we thought it might, because there's a lot of unintended consequences of this nuclear power that we need to think through. Well, we're beginning to see some unintended consequences of AI as well. And so that's why we need to add people in society to our circle as we frame these problems and we're moving them forward. It's not that we shouldn't move forward in AI, it's just that we need to move forward in a much more inclusive, holistic way to get the right answers. So it's another reason why I think the Grand Challenge Scholars Program is the key that unlocks the door to a healthy future going forward. Lastly, and we're going to open this up to questions, if you think about what's next for the Grand Challenges in the program that we've created, there are several compass directions that we need to think about expanding. One of them is global. The Grand Challenges are not American challenges, they're global challenges. And the only way we're going to make progress on this is if we learn as a community to think across disciplinary boundaries, to think across political boundaries, to think across time zones, to think of the human race as one family. And we need to begin to behave that way. And based on the recent news, we have a bit of work to do in that area. But this gives us a narrative, a purpose, and a format for having those conversations. So global expansion, reaching out to our partners on other continents is critical. And I think is well underway. It's really just early. We also need to reach across disciplines. Grand Challenges are not just engineering. And I think there's a little bit of a danger of us beating our chest and saying engineers are the only people who can make change in the world. I think some of you who know me remember this. I've had this long experience of being on the board of trustees of a neighboring college since 2001. It's Babson College, which is very well known for entrepreneurship. So the board has mostly got alumni, so there are essentially 40 MBAs, and there's me, okay? And so these guys are all business folks. And they you know what's so annoying? They use the word innovation all the time. Like, what right have they got to use it? They can't even spell engineering. And so what is innovation anyway? And it really occurred to me that innovation is the application of creativity in ways that change the way people live. And a really profound innovation is one that changes the world so profoundly that you can't remember the way it was before, and it's never going back. And then one of them in their boardroom mentioned the credit card. The credit card. Does anybody remember life without a credit card? You know, people don't even carry cash anymore. Maybe it doesn't take a Nobel Prize in physics to change the way people live. Maybe it's not just engineers that change the world. Maybe we really need to think more broadly about how education and other fields are important and bring them into the tent and welcome them into the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. I know the University of Texas at Austin has done some of that already, has reached out, has brought people in from other disciplines, and I think there's a new frontier there for us to reach out. So, partner organizations, you've already mentioned Engineers Without Borders. And I think the Sustainable Development Goals is a terrific UN program. We need to be looking for cousins and lock arms as like-minded souls in the same fight and not be too parochial about who got the credit for what we're doing if you really want to start a movement. The outreach to industry, which I think is really important. One thing I want to point out, as we grow this program to around 1,000 students in lots of different companies, the NAE is not a government program. It doesn't have a budget that the Congress pays for. It depends on philanthropy. It depends on support. So if you really want this program to be successful, we need to find people who invest in our young people for the next generation. And there's a reason why people go to banks to get money, because banks are where the money is. And I think you have to go to the investors that have money in order to help us expand the program. So we really need corporate support. Obviously, first to provide opportunities for our graduates, but also to help provide support for the program if you want it to grow. And the last thing is, you know, life doesn't begin at 18. K through 12 is a tremendous opportunity. I personally believe, and have believed for a long time, there are two things, and this has really come true now that I have a grandson that I can watch. All kids are born with two natural interests that don't have to be taught. They love mystery stories, and they love to make things. And when it's done right, science is a mystery story. It's not a bunch of facts that you learn in a book for a test. And engineering is making things. And I think if we just built that in to the core of what we do in our educational program, we would be overrun with students trying to join the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions. That is, if anybody's still awake.
Hi, my name's Elaine. I'm from Miami University, a student. My question is for any of the panelists. I think one kind of piece of the corporate involvement we haven't touched on today is how alumni can go out into their places of work, spread the message of the Grand Challenges, and then turn their employers into partners, or their institutions of post-grad education into partners of our institution. I was just wondering, especially for the students on the panel, have you had any experience sharing your experiences with your companies you've interned at or companies you're now working full-time with? And how could we, as alumni, do better to promote that message through that channel?
So I will say that I think engineering is part of everything. Right now, what I'm doing is, I wouldn't classify it as engineering. I'm working on science research projects. But the skills that you learn and like all of the different components that you have in the community building and the service learning and the technical skills especially make you stand out. When I'm in my office and some type of problem comes up that even is remotely related to numbers, everyone will turn to me and they're just like, oh, I don't want to even touch this. It's like too quantitative, even though there's like one equation. So that's definitely something that you can like bring up, but just having, I don't know, just the support of what everyone in this room, I think, is great, and that's what I would focus on.
It might be interesting, you know, the program First Robotics, which Woody Flower is also working with Team Cayman. I think it's 400,000 kids are doing that in K-12. So there might be interesting, I sometimes think about constellation structures. So there's like a bright star of the Grand Challenge program, and there's all these feeder things, what you're working on, programs that already exist. The reason why I thought of FIRST is because the company's mentor. And so there might be an interesting networked path where the alumni of this program and the alumni of that program collaborate a little bit to get the companies who are already involved in FIRST at the younger level and programs like it to say, hey, at the college level, there's a real opportunity here to bring it straight into, you know, extraordinary work life. Practice makes permanent is sort of what we're going for. So there might be some networked ideas to pursue what's there with the alumni. So the alumni basically don't have to do all the work, but they tap into other networks and get them bringing resources and contacts into it.
Really good suggestion. Other comments, questions?
So I've got a question, Rick. This is Jenna Carpenter. We had the ideas board out in the Great Hall. Do you have maybe some suggestions, some of the ideas that were suggested during the meeting?
Say that again?
Couldn't hear.
So the ideas board out in the
ideas
Great
board
Hall.
that was
Yeah,
in
I'm
there.
asking
Yes.
Rick if he's got some maybe summaries of some of the ideas that people suggested.
I actually,
That's what I was reading. I looked at all these ideas that, I mean, there were four categories there. I focused a lot on the things which were what could be done to make it a stronger project and so on. And as I said, it was connectivity between campuses was a very big one. Database for idea of projects was another one. Events. you know, and this is what you were saying, Mona, that events where people can meet and can exchange ideas and know what it has been done in other parts. So, and again, everybody's saying we want this to be more known, and that's why I put it in one word, branding, because everybody wants, when I talk that I was a GCSP student, so what's that, you know? So, but these are some of the things, and I have them all into copied, but that's where some of the ideas there.
I also have a list that was prepared.
Go ahead.
We're going to post these on the website so that everybody can see. I have actually, if you remember, people were asked to vote on their list, so there are a number of little green stickers that will tell you how many people like this. So this is like on your Facebook page.
If you didn't do it yet, make sure you do it after.
That's right. If it's still up out there, we should make sure. So I just want to read like 2 on each of the questions that had the most stars, okay? Just so that you get some clue. How can the GCSP Network Office support you, your program, or your students? The 2 with the largest likes, recruitment mission video with student experience sharing. I mean, all of us, schools, have a recruitment video of some kind, and I don't think we have such a thing for the GCSP. Do we, Randy? There's also a related question that I remember talking about some time ago about even creating a MOOC from the best courses that are already out there in different universities to bring them together, collate this with the NAE and put it into a format that any university could use. So that's one of the ideas. Another one is that student internships and research opportunities at national labs could be expanded. What unique or exciting activities on your campus support or align with the GCSP? The 2 most popular, apparently University of Texas at Arlington, brought 3 people here because they put 3 stars on that. It's the Maverick program with Advantage, Study Abroad, Undergraduate Research Leadership, Community Engagement and Career Services, and Engineers Without Borders. So these are related programs that could be better linked. How can we better connect GCSP to form a vibrant network? And the 2 most popular ideas are to provide events to meet, connect with GCSP scholars from other universities. Things like this that may be spread out and connected with other organizations. Maybe ASEE could have a session like this. Maybe the IEEE, the ASME, all of them, as they have meetings that bring students together, provide a forum. Make an annual meeting attendees and contact information list available. Now there's a really simple thing. You met this person, they were from Rhode Island, but I don't remember where. You can find them, okay? You could follow up later on. What grand challenge inspires you the most? This is really interesting. The only one that got multiple votes was having clean drinking water. The interesting thing about that, it doesn't have anything to do with your iPhone. Most of the student business plans have either an app for your iPhone or a robot. This is something that doesn't fit in that category that we could be thinking about. So these will all be made available. By the way, I should also point out that all the slides that you saw, including probably an entire independent website for Megan's slides, will be available after the event so that you can get access to these as you go. And one final sort of follow-up issue here about this is, suppose you're in the audience and you're really interested in the GCSP and you would like to create one at your own campus and you have questions. Where do you go with this? We've really never had this as a problem for 10 years because we've had Jenna. But now that Jenna is retiring, there's a question about where do you go with these questions? And I think the right answer is that you go to Rama. Rama is the guy who will find the answers for you to make sure that your program is launched. Are there other questions?
Hi, I'm Pamela McCauley with the National Science Foundation I-Corps Program Director, and when I'm not there, I'm a professor of industrial engineering at the University of Central Florida. And today has been so powerful, I mean, every aspect of it. And I just have a thought or a question. I was thrilled to see the community college on the panel this morning. I'm happy to hear about the feeder programs. But as we see a program like this, the Grand Challenges, and really grow, are we concerned that there will be, since this is it's not a funded program, that we will be leaving some folks behind who should be a part of it? We know how important project-based learning is, and even more effective for women and underrepresented minorities. So I'm just interested in hearing about thoughts or activities within NAE, or that some of you all are engaged in, that are addressing those needs to make sure that some of those folks who might be left behind aren't.
Yeah, this is a really pressing issue for us. And did anyone on the panel have an experience and advice on this?
I can just say that thank you, Pamela, for the question. I think what we haven't addressed today, and it's been sort of hidden today, is the actual effective cost of running the program. It's not been talked about. There hasn't been a single panel that's discussed the cost. So you're right. One of the barriers to entry is, how expensive is your program? How much it's going to cost you? Someone on my panel said, you need a stupid faculty member who wants to do the work. And I'm joking. I would not use that term. A committed person. But you're right. None of the schools right now, I don't think there's a single HBCU that's a part of this program. I don't think is there one? Okay. And excuse me? Okay. And then I think there's still a low number. The point. And I think there's that barrier to entry, which is money. And we all have to put that on the table, which is very true. So on my panel, I think Amanda Williams was one of the speakers, and she's talked about, I think some people laughed at this, but about getting celebrities to represent the program, and going to them to do fundraising that Rick was speaking about, because who's going to pay for the program, right? So and then Cleo mentioned branding, and so I just want to throw out a branding idea, and it's just almost for jest a little bit. So in the early 1990s, when the NBA was trying to rebrand itself, it went to celebrities, and it asked them to say on television, NBA is fantastic. We need those same celebrities today to say that GCSP is fantastic, right? That's a new brand, and we need to get big names in front of the television so kids believe in engineering and the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And I'm just joking in some sense, but I'm saying we do need a rebranding exercise that gets it out in the public layperson's terms.
I was just going to say, the other side is the idea of multidisciplinary teams. I think we heard that in a lot of panels today, and Grand Challenge Scholars are just one scholar, but there's a lot of collaboration that works on. I know I worked with a lot of different people for my project, but when you apply, it's just one person. And another thing is going back to your shout out to Michaela and policy. I know during the break I went up to try and talk to her, and I had to wait because there were 3 other people who wanted to talk to her. It's clearly the other ways that one person isn't just interested in engineering, you're also interested in all these other aspects. So you don't have to be just branded one engineer. You can be an engineer and also a policymaker and be interested in multiple things at once.
One of the things, I was just at the Heartland Summit, which was out in Bentonville, Arkansas, and what I did was I collected a lot of Americans who were already solving problems in interesting ways, and one of them was this fabulous team, woman named Erica out of Oklahoma, and they have a startup incubator, and they found that a lot of the entrepreneurs kept wanting to make an app for this or that, and it just wasn't enough. And so she just went to the nonprofits in the region and said, what are you trying to work on? And got everybody starting to talk, because the nonprofits were thinking, well, why would I use engineering or computer science? They're busy thinking I'm doing a social thing. And so this disconnect of community, it creates a great opportunity. And the reason why I thought of that is because they also went to, I'm not a sports person, the Oklahoma Thunder? Is that?
Oklahoma, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Thunder.
so the teams got all involved. And so it really lifted the profile to pull sort of that group, and they started to get money. And this is a little further along. We've graduated, we're founding companies, but it was a way to network. And it was a way to look at topics that would be of broader interest. It just broadens who's going to come, show up. A lot of our young people are like, why would I ever do science and technology? I need to save the world. And you're like, hello? And you want to show them this. And so it was a way to bridge that. So there may be clever ways, again, through community organizing, to pull in things that help us with funding, help us with branding, help us with teammates. One of my favorite ones would be if the Grand Challenge Scholars themselves, just like a graduate student might have some undergrads working with them, might have some high school or littler kids working with them officially as interns to pull more kids up. And similarly, the one I thought of with you is, could there be colleagues from other universities, specifically tribal colleges and HBCUs from the current group, and then those groups reaching out, and we start to mix our kids up across their undergraduate network so that they're much more what you are experiencing today and talking about how valuable that is. How fun, and we have this thing we can use, it's called the internet. You know, and you know, we don't have to make anything more, we can just use that. So it's so important to figure this out, because we know that the more diverse the team is, the better the product, the better the revenue, the better the solution. It may be a little more uncomfortable because people don't know each other as well and they're working across culture. But you just make better stuff. So it's just healthier for the program to prioritize this, not as a, oh, and we need diversity, but oh, top 3 priorities is to figure this out. So thank you.
I could just add one comment to this about cost before we lose this. Having spent now most of my career doing things by not following directions, okay? So Olin doesn't offer tenure, for example. So there's another way of thinking about cost rather than dollars, if you're a faculty member, is it costs you reviewed journal articles, okay? I mean, you could spend the time writing this article to go in a journal because my dean tells me that this is what I need in order to get promoted, because the peer faculty members at the university say that's the currency of the realm, and if you don't have reviewed journal articles, you can't get promoted. So if I didn't have to worry about that, if I could like trade off one of those papers each year, I could do things like start a Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And that doesn't actually cost you anything. It costs you new ideas. So some new thinking and new prioritization in higher education could create space within the same budget that we currently have.
I wanted to add one quick point.
Please.
Also, from the student perspective. I think the administration being on board is really critical as well, and creating on-campus opportunities for students that may not be able to get a chance to go abroad or something, because that is something that's incredibly expensive. And I was lucky to go abroad because there was a donor who had a stipend for me to do that, but otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I can think of things that I've done in all 5 of the realms that I've done just on campus alone. So I think the on-campus opportunities are critical, and keeping that in mind when you're structuring the program is a key part of it as well.
Terrific. How are we doing on time, Randy?
We're out of time, but we have another question if you want.
Okay.
Last point.
Last question. Yes.
Okay. I'm Sharmila Mukhopadhyay from Wright State in Dayton, Ohio. And the question I had was to piggy ride off the previous one. I'm glad to see that NSF is on board and other funding agencies, because, you know, we might be some of the stupid faculty who have totally bought into that and we are doing it for free. But every time I try to advance it and bring my colleagues in, one question is National Academies does a great job of maybe trying to get branding at the national, international level, but a lot of our universities are state funded. So if we can do some amount of branding at the state government level, that would really help us out, because they're the ones who control our boards and our deans and provosts and things like that. So thinking of having statewide chapters might be a great thing to sort of expand the branding in the America's heartland, if you will.
That's a very good point. Could maybe start with the flagship universities in each state. Really great. Well, I think this has been a very interesting day, a very exciting day for me to see so many people, 250 people registered this year, 150 last year. What does that mean? 700 next year? This will be a great, we'll fill up the auditorium. That's what we're going to do. Yes. Thank you very much for your attention all day and for your commitment to the Grand Challenges and to our next generation of leaders. And I hope you have a safe trip home. Thank you.